Giving and receiving is the hidden engine of your entire reality. But let me ask you something painful. Have you ever given your heart out and felt punished for it? Have you ever poured love, time, or money into the world and watched it come back as silence, loss, or exhaustion? Because giving and receiving isn't a moral trade, it's a mirror of the state you're living in. And in a moment you'll see why one young, broke Neville Goddard was forced to choose first class in consciousness, and later in the middle of war assumed freedom when every outer door said no. Picture a quiet night. The world outside is still, but inside you something is awake, a low hum behind the ribs. You've done your best, you've helped people, you've been generous, you've tried to do the right thing. And yet there's that question you may not even say out loud. Why do I give so much and still feel like I'm the one who's empty? Listen carefully. That question is not a complaint, it is a doorway. Because hidden inside it is a truth most people have never been taught. You do not give things, you give states. You do not receive things, you receive yourself reflected back to you. And consciousness, as Neville taught, creates after its kind. So whatever kind of consciousness you are being while you give, that is what returns to you multiplied. Not the coins, not the hours, not the favors, the state. There is a paradox here that sounds like madness until you feel it. Some of the people who give the most receive the least, not because giving is wrong, but because they are giving from the wrong self. They are giving from poverty consciousness, and poverty consciousness, no matter how polite, holy, or hardworking, can only create more poverty. But the one who gives from abundance consciousness becomes a channel through which infinite supply moves, and reality must conform to that declaration. That is not superstition, that is the law of assumption. And tonight I'm taking you into the heart of that law through the very teaching Abdullah planted in Neville's life, the 7 rhythms of conscious circulation. Because when those rhythms integrate into you, giving and receiving stop being 2 separate actions. They become one eternal flow. Now let me take you back. Not to a theory, not to a motivational slogan, to a living moment in time. It was 1931. New York was cold in a way that felt personal. The Great Depression had turned hope into something rationed. Men stood in long lines that curled around blocks, not for luxury, but for work, any work. The streets were a chorus of thin coats and heavier fear. On one of those evenings, a young man walked into a lecture hall on West 72nd Street. He wasn't famous. He wasn't prosperous. He wasn't even stable. He was a dancer, unemployed, broke. His name was Neville Goddard. He had heard whispers about an Ethiopian mystic who taught ancient laws of mind. He came hoping for a technique, a magic lever to pull him out of circumstances. But before I taught him anything about money or manifestation, I gave him the one instruction that decides everything. Start with self. Find self. Don't be ashamed of the being you are. Discover it and start changing that self. Neville thought he knew who he was. Most people do. But they only know the mask they've worn so long it fused to the skin. I looked at him and saw something he couldn't yet see. He was generous, yes, but his generosity carried fear beneath it. He was kind, but his kindness was bargaining in invisible ink. He helped, but his help was offered like a quiet plea for worthiness. He was giving from a closed hand inside. The gesture was open, the state was clenched, and the state always wins. Let this land in you. The closed hand creates poverty not because God is offended, but because the closed hand is the body's outer echo of an inner assumption. There isn't enough. If I let go, I will lose. I must sacrifice to be good. Receiving is selfish. When you give from that state, you are not planting abundance. You are broadcasting lack. And consciousness creates after its kind, so you get back more lack. This is why the first rhythm is mercilessly simple. Giving and receiving are not separated by your actions. They are united by your consciousness. If you've ever felt that tightness when giving, that hidden "what about me?" comment one short line right now. I choose overflow. 2 words. A quiet declaration that you're stepping out of the old state. Now listen. Most spiritual teachings have told people to give until it hurts, to sacrifice, to empty themselves for others as proof of faith. But the law underneath all that noise is different. You cannot give what you do not have. And this is where people misunderstand completely. They think it means, don't give if you're broke. They think it means, be selfish first. No. Because what you have is not a number. What you have is a state of being. You can physically hand someone money you're terrified to lose, but you cannot give wealth consciousness while living as a poor man inside. You can volunteer your time while secretly resenting every second, but you cannot give peace consciousness while living as a nervous system on fire. You can say, I love you, while starving for love, but you cannot give love consciousness while living as emptiness. What you give is not the thing. What you give is the consciousness behind the thing. So picture the generous martyr. They never say no. They empty their pockets for every cause. They carry everyone's burdens like a badge. They exhaust themselves helping others, and yet they stay perpetually broke, sick, or resentful. Why? Because every act of giving contains a silent inner sentence. Now I won't have enough. Maybe I'm not worthy unless I do this. I hope this earns me love. I hope they notice me. That is not giving from overflow. That is giving from need. And need is an assumption of lack in motion. Reality echoes it. This is why you must give to have, yes, but your giving must come from having, not from craving. A tree does not produce fruit to become a tree. It produces fruit because it is rooted in fullness. The fruit is not the cause of life, the root is. So the law invites you to do something radical. First, become abundant in consciousness, then give from that abundance. Not to manipulate life, but because that is the natural overflow of who you are. This is what living in the end really means. It is not a trick to get money. It is the decision to occupy the state of the one who already has. And once you wear that state inwardly, giving stops feeling like self-erasure. Giving becomes breathing. Here's a practical inner test Neville learned as a discipline. Before you give anything, money, time, energy, attention, pause 1 breath. 1. And ask quietly, who am I being right now? If the answer carries tension, fear, or hidden obligation, stop. Not forever, just long enough to shift. Because giving from fear is not generosity. It is confirmation of scarcity. Go inward. Enter imagination. Feel yourself already safe, already supplied, already whole. Feel the relief. Feel the dignity of first-class consciousness. Then give, because now you are giving from having, not needing. Now your giving is a broadcast of abundance, and abundance must return. This leads us into another rhythm that changes everything. You are not the source. You are the channel. Neville, when he first came, tried to be the source of his own wealth. He was straining to force results, trying to create life through effort alone. He was pulling on reality like a man trying to drag the ocean into a bucket. So I told him, there is nothing that can separate you from the source of all good. And then the line that terrifies the container but frees the channel. What you give is not yours, but the Father's. So you cannot be impoverished by letting go of it. Think of a pipe. If water flows through it, the pipe is never empty. It stays alive by allowing movement. But if the pipe tries to keep the water for itself, it blocks, it stagnates, the flow stops. That is what happens when you give from fear or hold from fear. You stop being a channel and try to become a container. Containers always run dry. Channels flow eternally. When you know you are a channel, you relax. Giving and receiving collapse into one movement. You're not giving your resources. You are allowing infinite supply to flow through you. You're not receiving from people. You are receiving from consciousness itself. And consciousness is infinite. Now, the fourth rhythm is a mirror so clean you can't hide from it. Giving reveals your consciousness. I don't need to ask what someone believes. I watch how they give. Do they give with resentment? They are in poverty consciousness. Do they give with fear? They assume there is not enough. Do they give with superiority? They are trying to prove worth. Do they give with obligation? They are living as a slave. But when a person gives from wholeness, it feels effortless, natural, joyful. Neville struggled with this at first. He wanted to appear abundant while hiding scarcity. Like many people, he thought the performance mattered. But performance does not create reality, state does. So I taught him uncritical observation of self, not judgment, not condemnation, not harsh positivity, just honest seeing. What consciousness am I giving from? When Neville did this, he saw something that shocked him. He was giving because he wanted something back, helping because he needed help, being kind because he hoped to be treated kindly. Underneath was a silent bargain. I don't have enough. I need something from you. And reality, obedient as a shadow, mirrored that. People who took without returning, situations where he felt used, promises that didn't come through, not because people were evil, but because his giving was affirming dependence. So the correction was simple and deadly precise. Give from having, not from needing. Pour love from fullness, not emptiness. Offer time from overflow, not guilt. Give money from abundance consciousness, not panic. Because the law doesn't multiply the thing, it multiplies the state. Now we enter the battlefield of receiving, where most people collapse. They pray for wealth, but believe they are unworthy. They desire abundance, but feel guilty about receiving. They want prosperity, but think suffering is holier. So they remain in lack no matter how hard they give or pray. This is the fifth rhythm. Receiving requires worthiness consciousness. You cannot receive what you believe you don't deserve. Unworthiness is a padlock on the door of heaven, and heaven is not a location. It is a state of consciousness you occupy. Let me show you how Neville learned this through a single moment that became a lifelong instruction. It was 1933. Still the Great Depression. 17 million unemployed. Dignity was scarce. Neville's brother sent him $50 and a first-class ticket home to Barbados. First class, a statement of worth. But when Neville went to the steamship company, they told him, "We can only accommodate you third class. You may use first-class areas by day, but you must sleep in third class." On the surface, that sounds like a small inconvenience. Spiritually, it was a war. Third class is never a cabin. Third class is a state. It is the old identity whispering, take what you can get. Be grateful for less. Don't assume too much. Neville came to me expecting sympathy. I gave him authority. Who told you you're going third class? You went first class. Then I shut the door in his face. Not arrogance, instruction. Because I was teaching him, you must assume first class before reality can give you first class. Neville accepted first class in consciousness, and reality rearranged itself. A cancellation appeared. First class became his outer fact. Assumption hardened into fact. That is receiving worthiness consciousness, not begging, being. At this point, if your soul is nodding, I want to speak directly to you in the simplest way. If you've been afraid to receive, it's not because you're humble, it's because you're living as a smaller self, and a smaller self cannot hold a larger world. So the new practice is this: receive with calm gratitude, not apology, because gratitude says, I knew this belonged to me. If you're ready to live this truth, not just hear it, join the 21-day challenge to create your dream life. The link is below. It's a daily discipline of assuming the new self until abundance consciousness becomes natural, and giving and receiving feel like one breath again. And now, let's go deeper. The sixth rhythm is what people call tenfold return, but most don't understand it. They think, if I give $100, I'll get $1,000. Sometimes reality will express it through money, but that's not the core. The core law is this: you receive what you give multiplied, not the thing, but the consciousness you gave from. So a fearful giver receives tenfold fear, a guilty giver receives tenfold guilt, a resentful giver receives tenfold resentment, an abundant giver receives tenfold abundance. This is why giving from fear does not open you to receive. It confirms your belief in scarcity. Reality mirrors that belief perfectly. So before giving, check the state. If it's fear, pause and shift. If it's obligation, pause and return to fullness. If it's overflow, give freely, because the return is already implied in the state. That isn't manipulation, it's alignment with the law. Now, Neville's second great proof of worthiness consciousness came in wartime. He wanted an honorable discharge from the army. He requested it. He was denied. The colonel disapproved. The outer world said no. But Neville went to sleep that night, living in the end. He imagined himself home in New York. He walked through his apartment inwardly. He felt the normality of his freedom. At 4 a.m., he saw a vision, a white sheet with disapproved, signed by the colonel. Then a hand crossed it out and wrote approved. A voice in him said, "That which I have done, I have done. Do nothing." 9 days later, the colonel called him in and honorably discharged him. Do you see the structure of reality? Neville did not argue with man. He assumed the state, and reality, the obedient shadow, rearranged. That is authority consciousness, not arrogance, authority. The authority of knowing who you are. All of this leads to the seventh rhythm, the one that integrates everything. Become the channel of infinite supply. The goal is not to give more or receive more. The goal is to live as the open medium through which abundance flows. When you know there is nothing that separates you from the source of all good, you stop acting like a dying container. You stop hoarding. You stop martyring. You stop bargaining. You open. And when you open, giving becomes effortless, because you give from overflow. Receiving becomes natural, because you assume worthiness. Fear dissolves, because you no longer depend on people, markets, or moods as the source. You depend on the infinite within. Gratitude replaces anxiety because you begin to sense what has always been true. You weren't meant to hunt abundance. You were meant to be abundance, to broadcast prosperity consciousness so cleanly that reality must echo it. Now, let's bring all 7 rhythms into one living instruction. The closed hand creates poverty because it is an assumption of scarcity. You cannot give what you do not have because you give consciousness, not things. The channel must be open because you are the medium, not the source. Giving reveals your state: fear, obligation, superiority, or overflow. Receiving requires worthiness consciousness. Shame blocks supply. Tenfold return multiplies your state, not your object. Becoming the channel makes giving and receiving one effortless movement. And here is what that looks like when it becomes your daily life. Someone asks for help. You don't give from panic. You don't give from guilt. You don't give to buy love. You give from overflow, from the state of one who already has. Money comes to you. You don't shrink. You don't apologize. You don't feel guilty for being blessed. You receive with calm gratitude because you know your worth is not negotiable. An opportunity appears. You don't chase it desperate and trembling. You recognize it as the natural outflow of your abundance consciousness. You occupy the state of already having it, and reality conforms. This is what it means to enter co-partnership with the infinite, not begging for crumbs, not trying to earn heaven, but asserting your birthright as a joint heir. Authority without arrogance. The calm conviction of a person who knows, I am the channel, and the source is endless. Now we rise into the final revelation, the one promised at the beginning. Here it is, simple and electric. The universe is not testing your generosity. It is reflecting your identity. You have never been stuck because you didn't give enough. You have been stuck because you gave from the wrong self. So tonight, not tomorrow, not someday, do the only revolution that matters. Find self, not with shame, with honest light. See the state you've been living in, the hidden fear behind your kindness, the guilt behind your receiving, the old story that poverty is safer than abundance, the belief that you must shrink to be spiritual. Then revise. Revision is not rewriting the past to feel better. Revision is changing the state that produced the past. You step into imagination and live the end. See yourself as the abundant channel. Feel the naturalness of having. Feel the dignity of worthiness. Feel the quiet peace of knowing the kingdom is within. Let that state become familiar. Let it become home. Then give from overflow. Receive with authority. And watch reality reorganize itself around the new assumption, the way a city reorganizes around a sunrise. Because consciousness does not negotiate, consciousness creates. So the question is no longer, how much should I give? How much can I receive? The question becomes, who am I being? If you are being the one who lacks, life will keep proving lack. If you are being the one who is worthy, life must prove worthiness. If you are being the channel, the flow has no ceiling. And this is the state I am inviting you into now, not as an idea, but as an identity. You are not a container. You are not a martyr. You are not a beggar. You are the open channel of infinite supply. Giving and receiving are one movement, one breath, one river. So live from it now, assume it now, feel it now, and let the world catch up to who you've already decided to be. Because you are not becoming, you are remembering. And the imagination is awake, and it is already real.